I have a video clip here that I want to play for you in just a moment. It's a Premier David Eby of British Columbia ranting about the fantasy pipeline to the Northwest Coast. Now, everybody in Canada, I think, knows at this point that Alberta Premier Danielle Smith and the Alberta oil and gas industry want a pipeline to either Kitimat or Prince Rupert. And Danielle Smith keeps talking about a 1 million barrel a day pipeline, which is huge, by the way. So Eby has been returning fire over the last 2 to 4 weeks. And in the clip, what's hugely ironic here is that he is doing exactly to Danielle Smith what she has been doing to Ottawa for the last 3.5 years. This is grievance politics. He's accusing her of things. He's riling up British Columbians. He's got his pet name, the Phantom Pipeline. He's on and on and on. And I've said this before, but it bears repeating. Peter Lougheed, the iconic former Alberta Premier, somewhere is rolling over in his grave watching Danielle Smith, because he had 6 principles that he governed by, and one of them was practice statescraft. And what that means is that you do politics really well. You build coalitions, you build bridges, you build relationships, you get people on your side, and you make deals, and you don't spend 3.5 years constantly harping and whining and complaining about how your province gets so hard done by, and then be surprised when the premier of said province stands up to you and makes similar kinds of comments on his social media accounts. And another thing about this, which I find hugely amusing, is all of the Alberta oil and gas proxies are absolutely lighting their hair on fire. And it's a lot of them. I mean, this is part of it. It's really funny to watch the industry complain about how its narrative is not accepted and they never get to have their say in the conversation. They dominate the conversation. Anywhere you go on social media, you'll find these, whiny Albertans in the industry, outside the industry, investment bankers, whatever, whining how Canada, is... Alberta's hard done by at the hands of Alberta, and now BC. So they've been whining about Ottawa for all these years, and now they're affronted, absolutely affronted, that David Eby would do the same thing in his province. I mean, hoist on your own petard, folks. Listen to Peter Lougheed. It's not too late. You can still wind your neck in, be nice, talk nicely to Eby, talk nicely to BC First Nations, who also, for the most part, don't want the pipeline, or in some cases LNG plants, and start to build bridges. Because Eby's going to burn yours if you're not careful. And he knows the federal government has exclusive jurisdiction to approve the construction of a new pipeline from Alberta out to the West Coast. That is, it was determined beyond a shadow of a doubt during the Trans Mountain expansion controversy. He knows it. So he's going to make political life uncomfortable for Prime Minister Mark Carney. You could see this coming a mile away, and I know because I've been saying it for months now. This is the way the politics are going to play out. And Carney has essentially painted himself into a corner here. He's been so optimistic. He's raised expectations in Alberta. He's raised Smith's expectations. He's raised the expectations of CEOs in the industry. They expect there will be a pipeline. So now what does he do? But say that, but only if the BC, meaning the government of British Columbia, and BC First Nations sign on. Well, nobody in their right mind would ever expect that BC and the First Nations are going to sign up, because we all remember what happened in 2016, 2017, 2018, the massive protests and the court cases and the, on and on and on. It was a huge political fight between BC and Alberta. So this is a conundrum. And I don't see any way out of it. Carney has essentially painted himself into a corner. Smith is going to Smith, as she always does. And now Eby is returning fire, and she's got a worthy opponent because he can go toe-to-toe just the same as she can, and will, because it's in his political self-interest to do so. Anyway, watch this clip. And this is a preview, folks, of what's coming up over the next 6 to 12 months. There is going to be some serious mudslinging. And the sad thing is, the people who are going to get mud on them is you and me, Canadian citizens.
The fictional Alberta bitumen pipeline project achieves literally none of these things. Doesn't have First Nations consent. Makes no financial or economic sense. It has no private proponent, no route, no private funding, and would cost taxpayers billions. The non-existent Alberta pipeline project would put tens of billions of dollars in real BC projects and jobs at risk. On top of that, it threatens one of the world's most precious and intact ecosystems, our beautiful BC coast and Great Bear Rainforest. This region is one of our country's greatest assets and supports thousands of jobs in coastal industries. Salmon alone supports local jobs, communities, and cultures. It's central to both the economy and way of life on the North Coast. The Alberta Fantasy Bitumen Pipeline means putting all of that, the major projects, the economy, the jobs, and our coastline, at risk. What the Conservatives in Alberta are pushing is an entirely political creation in the lead up to their election for wedge politics at the expense of British Columbia and Canada's economy. And they're being supported by the BC Conservatives, again, at the expense of British Columbians and our valuable coast. As all Canadians feel the impact of Donald Trump's trade war, let's not give in to those who aim to bring his politics here. We are British Columbians, we are Canadians, and we will choose a better way. As your Premier, I promise you this: I will always stand up for BC jobs, for BC's economy, for Canada's economy, for our country and our province's beautiful and abundant coast. And most importantly, I will always stand up for you.